Going to be flying it around. Meow. I'm kidding.
We don't meow around.
Only in the garage when no one's looking. So. Hi everybody, it is KJ from Metro Hobbies here again with Max, and it is the third installment of Light My Bricks meets Model Kits. Light My Models. And I have to say today that I'd like to thank Light My Bricks, because Light My Bricks does a number of DIY components and they have supplied, so to sponsoring this, we've got some connecting cables, we've got our bit lights, we've got large bit lights, we've got our expansion boards. So that means we can start actually installing some lights into this kit, which means we need to know, Max, where are you up to, what have you done with your build, and what can we install today?
Right, okay, it's fairly straightforward. Essentially what I've done, I've painted the body shell, or the cabin parts of it. I've drilled out bits and pieces. I've sort of fitted a few other bits and pieces, and that's almost ready to go. You'll notice underneath it's all painted matte black. The reason for that is we want to cut the light out from bleeding anywhere. Yep. There will be spots where I'll also put tape over to make sure that it's well and truly sealed up. That's the back side of one of the front sections, so that's going to fit in there quite nicely.
Got all the little holes drilled out.
All the little holes drilled out because I've drilled out all the sections because this is going to have flashing lights in it. I've also drilled out a couple of overhead lights and things like that, so that any leaked light that we leave will actually flow through there. I've also painted up and darkened, or blackened. This is all the lower hull section. We've blackened all that. I've also added the tubes and things that we wanted to fit so that the lights will be contained within the tube. The flight deck for the flying sub, so that's all ready to go. What else have I done? I've done the engines. I've blacked them out as well, inside and out, so that, again, when we fit the lights, we're not going to have light leakage. Made the roof for the deck, because in the kit it doesn't come with it, but to help lock out light and stuff like that, I've made a little piece to go on top for there, and that will also, and there'll be a light in the top of that as well.
Get like a blue effect in there maybe.
Yep, blacked out the interior of the sail so that we can make sure the lights are all good there.
Got some micro lights for that one.
Yep, that's the upper section of the front section. So we've blacked out that. I've also blacked out the tail. Now, the tail section, this is where we're going to mount all the battery and things like that, because this will then slide on, like that sort of thing. And I'm going to fit a couple of magnets in each end and in there so that it holds it in place.
So we're ready to put tail lights in here then today?
Yes, we are.
Excellent.
So we're going to put tail lights in there today. We're going to put the headlights and the downlights in there. We're also going to fit the lights that are in this this section of the sail, so the red and green and the white light. And from there, that'll probably keep us busy for the day.
All right, sounds exciting. Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start with the large cool bit lights for the tail lights. We're going to install them along here. We're going to use 50 centimeter connecting cables that allow us, as Max said, to actually pull the tail lights away and actually access where the battery is using the magnets. And we'll install that into a 6-port expansion. So let's get started.
Now, just one quick one. The beauty of what Mobius did, they actually made the channel for wiring in the kit, so you don't have to dig anything out, so it's all ready to go.
Perfect.
So,
large bit lights. Do we have our super glue, or do we want to? I'm just going to actually bend it up so it's in the position. So the nice thing about the lights is you can actually very gently shift them and hold them in place. So that's part of what you're going to be doing when you're installing these lights, is that you're actually using the fact that wire holds its shape to get them to stay in the right spot.
There you go. Bit of tape, just to hold them in place.
Perfect. Just as it dries,
Just to help it dry out a bit, we're just leaving it...
Also sort of training it to stay in that position as well. The wire has a tendency to go to its natural state.
Yeah. So there you go. There's the first... This will all be glued in properly at a later stage, so that's all good.
Perfect. So now what we're going to do, because we need to extend it, we've got these little bits of wire. This is the expansion board. So we're going to plug that in. Now with these lights, the crucial thing to know is that you have these little soldering bits, and then on the actual wires themselves, there's a side that has exposed wires, and there's a side that has not exposed wires. Because it's black, it's a little bit hard to tell, but that's the non-exposed side, and that's the exposed wires side. So you can see the brown going all the way down. You actually have to face the exposed side towards the soldered side, and then you can place it in. Just push it nicely. If there's too much resistance, you've got it the wrong way around. So that's our expansion board. So what we can do with that now is that I can add a 50 centimetre. So 50 centimetre is the current largest extension wire available. So here we go. Nice long wire. Might be a bit difficult to see, depends on our depth of field. I'm going to do the same thing. It also has the exposed wires, but I'm going to put it at the very back of the expansion board to give us as much leverage as we can possibly want. So now, when we attach that into the main hub, we can pull this out without it pulling the wires too much. You've got that ability to, as Max wanted to do, is to put the magnets on and then pull it out. This end itself will also be attached into an expansion board. So I'm going to do that now just to protect the end of the wire. So I'm going to attach that again just into another expansion board. Again, expose wires towards the soldered element and just push it in. From here, we'll have another 50 centimetre expansion board that goes to the centre of the hole, the centre of the beast, so we can actually light up the cockpit and the sail.
Yep.
But this gives us a lot of work with, so we can pull that out. So you can see that if this was attached to the base of the hull, just right near the tail, we could then pull that out, easily get in access into size. You've got so much space there. So that would be sitting quite literally just in here.
Yep.
And so that's all this wire space. Probably could have got away with 30 centimetres, but 50 it is.
Gives us a room. So that all goes in there. This will slide. We'll wire this all out properly. So that'll slide into...
Let's test it. Make sure those lights are still working.
So that slides into there, right? So that gives me the option in the future, if I need to check something or work something or whatever, we want to check it, it slides out. We've got plenty of room that we can work with and go from there.
Let's have a look, make sure that
Make sure it works, of course.
This is actually an important part of Light My Bricks in general, is that you must test your lights all the way along, because if you pinch the wires too much, you will affect the current flow, and they they won't work very well.
So there you go.
That's very bright.
We have some very bright lights. Now these will have covers over them, so that's going to dull it down a fraction, and we'll go from there.
We'll probably have to super glue them into place once we've did the final glue of the actual tail to just get them to sit. Or the cover might hold them in place.
The cover will probably hold them into place.
Alrighty.
So there's step one.
Perfect. Let's go on to next step. We're going to go for the cockpit downlights, yes?
Yes. What we're going to look at now, this is the lower hull, and this is the doors and that where the flying sub sits. So I've done this so that it's slightly open, or it's either closing or it's opening to allow the sub in. Normally that's one big piece. So I've allowed it to be open, so because we're going to have a flashing light in here and everything else, just to give it a bit more action or movement as such. But today we're going to fit the downlights and the headlight. What I've done is carve out the section here and put a tube in, which has been blackened so that we keep the light and everything else just in one position. The downlights, just to help support the actual downlight and everything else, and also to blacken out and keep the light concentrated in one spot. So KJ's now going to fit these up, and we're going to have a look at what we do next. So
we're going to use the large bit lights, or the cool lights, because these are floodlights. Inside we're going to be using normal bit lights, but I'll just point out that we are using large bit lights, which are much larger, and these ones are cool, so they're much brighter. you'd use if you were trying to drive. You wouldn't use warm light, you'd use a cool light. We're going to fit these in place into those positions. Probably only need, because the wire can hold it in place, we probably only need a spot of the super glue to hold it in place. And then if we use the accelerator, we won't have to hold it too long. It'll be there, it's in place. And then we can, if you're going to put a bit of black tape over the top of that, do you
Yes,
think?
that's
So
fine.
then that will help hold it in place. So we're going to have 3 bit lights going in here. These are the large cool bit lights. And then we'll probably have an expansion board for having them to get plugged in, which needs to also support the lights that once we get to that stage as well.
Because there's going to be 2 sets of lights in this area. One's going to be a rotating flashing light, and the other one's just going to be a standard strip light in the back of it. This will all be painted grey and silver, the struts there and that in silver. So that will all become part of the whole expansion board.
Considering we're talking about it, and we're going to need an 8-port expansion port for this one because we're going to have so many lights plugged into it. We haven't had access to this before. Let's see how this actually works. Because I'd like us, if you wanted to have it it's going to be white or a warm white, but if we could actually get that painted, you could go for the warning colour or orangey colour, depending on what you're after.
It's going to be orange.
So I think you can probably paint up the LEDs.
Yep. In that case, I'd probably use just an acrylic clear, just paint it over the top of it.
So there's your little warning light. I think it's cool to get that. That's going to go in here, is that right?
That's right.
So that's going to go, we're going to fit that in there.
I've already pre-drilled the holes to take it.
So that once it's down, you'll actually be able to see that will flood through. But it will be ultimately orange in the end, is that right?
Yep, it's going to be orange.
But yeah, this is a really cool bit light. It was actually designed to go in the top of a Lego TARDIS, but it's a perfect warning light for a docking bay, basically.
Yeah.
All right, let's get these ones in. Let's get to it.
How far are you going to bury that in it?
Well, what I was
Because there's
thinking,
covers that go over there, there, and there.
what I was thinking is that if I thread it to there, does that seem right to you?
Yep.
And then I was going to,
Because this is why I got the blue tack. You could blue tack that on
rather than glue it.
rather than super glue it, because I'm then going to take the blue tack off and put a cover over it.
Yeah, all right, we can do it that way.
What do you reckon?
Well, if it holds in place, then it works. Do you want to test it? So what you do need to do is you do need to get your wires so that they're actually like this. So that when you put them in, perfect. So same thing.
We're using blue tack at the moment to do this, so that once these are locked in, we can then I'm going to put a cover over each unit and then glue them into place.
So we're making a little hook, put it in. So utilise the fact that the wires will hold the position as long as you train them to hold the position. They will naturally want to spring into their own sort of environment, but if you can train them, bending over to make it flat and then finding that point where you're going to want them to, oh actually this is for the front, so we're just going to bend it over this way and then insert until there.
We can also, while the blue tack's on there, you can adjust it so that we know exactly where it's all going to line up and be happy with.
And like I said, we're going to use an 8-port expansion. So I'm going to position this down here at the back. What's going to ultimately be plugged into this 8-port expansion is not just these downlights, but we are going to also be plugging in parts for the docking bay once we get up to that stage, once Max gets up to that stage.
And part of the main deck.
And part of the main deck. And you try and utilise. So that's all plugged in. And then we have to, and again, make sure that the exposed wires face the soldered wires. This is my Light My Bricks power pack. This is really important to test because again, like I said, if you pinch the wires, they will affect the light, they'll sort of turn on and then switch off because they won't be getting the power properly. Boom.
So there you go. Gives you a bit of an idea of the light coming down, and then that's the headlight. So this will have covers. These will both have clear covers over them, so that'll make them up a bit more. So if you...
But that black is working beautifully. Because
Yes.
if you remember back from part 2, we had them in without the black paint. That black paint is perfect. It really is helping them direct the light.
Yep, so you're not seeing bleed around the light. It's not haloing, so that you've just got... And with the tube, it's also making it more direct rather than just a light that's blasting out. So it's giving it, as you can see by the dots on the table, we're getting a spotlight type of effect, which is what we're aiming for.
All right, so we're up to the sail.
Yes.
And we're going to use micro lights this time. So these are really, really tiny lights. One of them is green, ready for it's the right-hand side, is that right, Max?
Yes.
And then we've got white, but we're going to actually paint that green or put a...
Red.
Red, sorry. I don't know what I've been drinking, but Kool-Aid maybe. So the white, we'll paint it red on this side, and then we'll have a white one at the tip.
Correct.
So we're going to try and feed them down. If the holes aren't large enough, because we don't really want to make the holes any larger, then we can probably try and feed them up, and we'll use tweezers to do that. So I'll start with the white bit lights. Now, the micro bit lights actually have their own micro expansion port, so I will just talk to you about this quickly. At the ends of a micro expansion port, they have the larger wire pocket, so you can plug it into any other expansion port. But on the inside, just here, they have the smaller ones. Now, the exposed wires for the bit light, the micro ones, will face down. So I'll show you a close up of that in a minute. So let's get into it.
Okay.
Using tweezers because it will help the direction. Yeah, it's not going to work, so we'll have to go the other way.
No, I'm thinking you feed the wire down through then pull it.
That is the end of the wire. I can't get that through.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's too fat, so I have to... That would be nice. Because this...
This, ladies and gentlemen, is what's called modelling, where you actually have to do a little bit of modelling and a little bit of adjusting and a little bit things like that. So sometimes you just have to modify it.
Yeah, that's it. Now to hold this in place, do we want to go for the...
A little bit of blue tack.
Okay, so this is the part where I explained that it's a much smaller end or connecting cable, but they've still got those exposed wires and the unexposed wires. And this is a microbit expansion board. The unexposed wires on this one needs to go pointing down. And these are a little bit more fiddly to plug in. Sometimes I use tweezers to provide that extra little bit of... Make sure the exposed wires are down. Okay, just gently push it in. There's a little bit more resistance, so it's a little bit harder to tell. What we are ultimately to do, once we've got all these in place, we will be putting the 50 centimetre expansion boards, cables to attach to the cockpit and then to attach it to the tail, so because this is sitting up roughly near the middle. So we've got one light in. Now we're up to the side that's going to ultimately be white, red.
Which is, according to my picture, just let me make sure that we've got them the right way around.
Probably important.
Red.
On this side.
Red is this side, green's that side.
All right. Let's see if we can do it without modification. So at the moment this one's going to be red, but we will change it to be, sorry, it's going to be white. We're going to be changing it to red once we've got some paint onto it. Okay, plugging it in. Again, exposed wires go towards the base. Just be gentle. Don't push too hard. If you do push too hard, and I know this from experience, you will take the connector off the electrical board. Okay, so we're moving on to actual green light.
Yep.
So that we don't have to worry about doing any changes.
Yes.
All right, so we've got all the wires fitted. They're all ready to go. The expansion wire is plugged in here. We've got to test the lights first. Boom. That's kind of going to be too bright, isn't it?
Yeah, what you're getting the effect that when this is red as well, this whole wing will be red, this whole wing will be green. It'll look silly. So we're going to fit a
dimmer control board. This is something that Light My Bricks does that dims down the light. So we're going to unplug from this one, and I'm going to get some expansion cables. I'm going to grab my 15 centimeter because I don't need very much length, but I need a little bit of length. So you can also get 5 centimeter ones. It's the same principle here, is that you have the exposed wires facing the soldering ones when it comes to the larger or the normal size bit lights. And I'm going to plug it into the in, which will just be 5 volts because that's what we're putting through the system. So that's the out. So this one is the part that we're controlling. And then the power in is going here. Okay, so initially let's just test it with the power board with the USB port. So I'm using a USB cable to test to make sure that the lights work. So we'll just plug that into the 5 volt socket, which is basically just means power. So you can ramp the light right up, so back to what it was, or you can turn it down and just mute those lights.
That's better.
And now you've got just the muted lights.
That's much better. You don't have that washout green effect or white effect, which in this case will be eventually red, so that you don't have that sort of washed out look through the model.
So what we're going to need to do, because there's obviously going to be power, this is going to need to be powered by either the front section or the back section. So to do that, we're going to get one of those 15 centimeter cables again. We're going to plug it into a 6 centimeter expansion port, so it'll allow us to plug more cables. I'll take out the power, and I will put the power through that. So that means that'll allow us to we'll go back to our 50 centimeter cables, so I can run this 50 centimeter cable all the way down the body of the fuselage to the other 6-port expansion board, so we can have all cylinders firing at once, if you like, or all lights firing at once. So we'll just get that set up, and then maybe we can see this whole thing all positioned out in one. All right,
Absolutely.
So let's have a look.
So there you go.
That's so cool. That's better than what I thought in terms of like putting it together, and we've barely started. We've got tail lights, we've got the sail. Mind you, it's not red, but the dimmer board looks so good. It has that little plume bit.
Yeah, no.
And then the spotlights, you can see the spots, the headlight. That's going to be so good once we get the cockpit done.
Oh, yeah. And what I'll do is, as we were just saying before, what I'll do is go through and super glue. At the moment, all these are just on hold.
Yeah.
There's still covers and that to go over these as well. So I'll super glue all the wire to certain points to give it less chance of moving around.
Yep.
But with everything now based in the back of the sub, then it's easy access if we need to change something or fix something
there.
or whatever. So in fact, that's pretty tight. So I'm not sure that I'd even put magnets in.
Might not be necessary.
Because it's once I glue all this together and clean it all up, I may not put magnets in there because that is actually pretty strong and pretty tight. By the time I paint it and it's got a surface...
You're not going to be flying it around. I'm kidding.
We don't around.
Only in the garage when no one's looking. So we've got, you should talk about how you've actually, under here, we've actually got, in order to wire this, there is a 6-port expansion port, and I've bundled the wires inside here, and then we've got connecting cables that run the length of the fuselage, and to help us actually feed that, Max has actually got holes in the top.
The kit doesn't come with these. You've got to cut these in yourself. So because of what I was watching KJ do before, I'm going to extend this quite a bit. and then I may magnetise these to hold them into place as well. But the fit on them is pretty good. The whole model's fit is very, very good. So it's not a lot that I have to play around with. And I've drilled holes in there. There's also holes drilled in there, so we're running the wires all the way through. So if you're going to do that, you're going to have to do a bit of surgery and things like that to get everything to fit properly. As I said, this is our way of doing it. People who look at this further may come up with another way of setting up the lights the way they want to or whatever, but as a numpty sort of person just starting out with doing this sort of thing, I found this so fascinating, and it's now made me go, oh, what else can I do?
It's a modular system. You can just,
Yeah, it's a modular system.
you can just do whatever you want.
I can even see me doing the wingtip lights on aircraft, on large-scale aircraft or something like that. I've also still got a number of sci-fi items to do. I've got a big scale flying sub, and I've got a Jupiter 2, and I've got other things that now this KJ's given me this whole new area that I can play around with and light up the models a lot easier than watching some guys who do microfiber filaments or
Optic fibers,
and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
This is so simple. It's plug this in, it works. That's the way I'm going to do it. So our next big job is the cockpit, which we're going to go nuts on and light up, and we're going to show you all that.
Engines.
And we're going to do the engines. These engines are going to be fitted out as well. So we're going to have this lit so that from the back you'll not only see the lights at the back, but also the pulsing engine units going as well. That's why all this has been blacked out. But that's all for future. KJ, thanks so much for...
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's an absolute blast.
It's been fun, and
we're not quite there, but look how far we've come.
Yep.
So,
and don't forget, this is all going to be painted and all the rest of it yet. So all this is just to get us to this point. So, and again, thanks to the Light My Bricks people. Been such a great choice of stuff that they've donated to us to play around with. It just gives us more options, and we keep coming up with, let's try,
yes, that's right.
let's plug this
that's
in,
right.
things like that. So you can have a lot of fun with this, and it's because it's so modular, you can play. You can just mess around with it and come up with all sorts of things.
So it's definitely, if you can imagine it, you can light it.
Yep, absolutely. Bye. See you next time.